Have you heard the phrase fat adapted or perhaps keto adapted and wondered what that meant? You're going to enjoy this video. Hey team, it's Mike here at After 40 Fitness and after40fitness.ca. Another great question came in this week. You know how I always say send an email to Mike at after40fitness.ca or put a comment with a question or a concern in any one of our videos, and I'll be happy to answer it, turn into a video just like this one. Well, again, it happened this week. I'll throw it up here. Look at this question from Brandy. Again, via email was, how do I know if I'm keto fat adapted? There seems to be no way to know for sure, just symptoms. Your thoughts? If you haven't yet, please do subscribe. Hit the like button. If you know anybody who's doing keto, then this is a video you're going to want to share with them, right? Particularly if people are talking about starting or getting into keto, giving it a go, then this is something they're going to want to know about, this getting fat adapted or keto adapted. Those words are interchangeable, so going forward, I'm going to refer to it as fat adapted. So please don't just hit like and subscribe and help me and the channel grow, but please do share this with anybody you think that it would be relevant and pertinent to. Really appreciate that. On that note, how do I know if I'm keto fat adapted? You know, the truth of the matter is that there is no way to know. Being fat adapted is one of those things that you can't test for like you can for ketones, right? It's not the same as ketosis. However, I will say this, generally speaking, it seems to fall in the 3 to 6 week range. I noted in a study that I'm going to share with you in a couple of minutes that elite athletes, elite cyclists can do it in as little as 2 weeks. However, the average seems to be in the 3 to 6 range, let's call it an average of 4 weeks to achieve keto adaptation. So let's talk about what that means. First, I just want to comment on what it's not. It's not ketosis. Okay, if you are or have tried ketosis or read up on it, you know that you can be in ketosis in as little as, depending on your level of insulin resistance, in as little as 24 hours. And the majority of people can get it between 36 and 72 hours. Very few people need to go longer with ultra low carbs than 72 hours to have detectable ketones. Right? So that's neat to know. It's not the same. It's something that happens beyond that. Second, I read the other day that someone said it was diuresis. That as soon as you experience diuresis, you're fat adapted. Not the case. In case you haven't heard of that word before, I'm going to throw up the definition, but diuresis in a nutshell is expelling water. It's when the kidneys pull water out of your system, out of your bloodstream, and you expel it. Now, well, what we know about the keto program, about the keto diet, is when you cut carbs, that's a natural phenomenon. That naturally, depleting carbs from your body causes your body causes your kidneys to do this process called diuresis of pulling out the fluids. The reason for that, in case you're wondering, and you probably know this, the reason for that is carbs cause water retention. It's just a phenomenon in the body whereby each molecule of carb can hold up to 4 times its weight in water. It's like a sponge. It draws water in and soaks it in. Right. So as soon as you cut carbs, as soon as your own glucose levels are depleted, which takes again between, let's call it 24 and 72 hours, then all that water no longer has anything to bind to, and the kidneys excrete it, they expel it. Right, so diuresis happens very quickly. For most people, they begin to experience this increased urination, again, at the exact same time frame in the first 48 to 72 hours, which is why in the first week, many people in social media talk about losing 4, 5, 6, 10 pounds in the first week, while 99% of it's water weight. When it comes to fat adaptation, though, there are so many variables. It's very individual. Just like everything that's diet related is very individual. There are so many things that can impact it. For example, how insulin resistant you are. So the more overweight and or obese a person is, then typically the higher their insulin resistance. Age, sex, genetics, oh my goodness, the quality of the food in your diet up until that point, as well as the quality of the food in your keto regimen, all plays a role. How much sleep you get, how good it is, how restorative, the stress you're under. However, there are some commonalities that people point to, some good, some bad. Let's talk about those both really quickly. If you do a YouTube search and you look up fat adapted and you look up videos by Dr. Ekberg or Dr. Berry, they'll mention a couple, and they always seem to start with a loss of hunger, a loss of cravings, the ability to skip a meal. Okay, so, well, let's talk about that real quick. So obviously being able to skip a meal is the same as having no hunger. Right? If you're not hungry, then all of a sudden you can afford to skip breakfast and not notice, right? All of a sudden it's noon, you get tied up in something, it's 2 in the afternoon. That's a feature of ketosis, right? The ability to no longer experience hunger is a key feature of ketosis. Now, they'll refer to that as being a feature of being fat adapted. I disagree. If you are serious, if you're honest, if you have a good recollection, you'll notice that in about a week, and for me it was a week, after 1 week of being in ketosis, I was able to skip meals. And I was doing some searching on this and I came across a doctor. Some of you may be familiar with this name already, but Dr. Westman. Dr. Westman is a keto doc, and he puts people who are looking to lose weight for whatever the reason into a ketogenic program, into a keto regimen. Let me play this quick clip for you, and let's see what he says about the hunger, the cravings, etc. in the first week. Notice.
Some people have side effects the first few days or the first week. You might notice cravings for foods that you're not eating, cravings for the sugar or the fruit or the things you're not eating. No problem, the cravings will go away. And by next week, when I see you, I'd like to see you all next week in the clinic, the cravings should be gone. In fact, one of the first questions I ask you is, are you hungry? And if you say you're hungry, something's wrong. So by next week, you ought to come back, if you've done this for about a week, and tell me that you're having no hunger at all. That's the way I know it's working.
So in 1 week, he expects, working with real life people, not reading out of a textbook, not talking about theories, in his everyday practice, he expects in 1 week for hunger and cravings to be gone. And that's how he'll know that the regimen, the diet program, if you will, is working for them. So when I talk to people about what they can expect on the keto journey, I say get through the first week, just like Dr. Westman. Get through 1 week, commit, hell or high water, that you will commit to the regimen for the first week, and then you'll know if it's sustainable. Now that we've gotten hunger and cravings and getting hangry out of the way as not truly being an indicator of being fat adapted, what is? Number one is going to be ketone strips. If you have tested using ketone urine strips, then something neat happens. You immediately, again, in 24 to 72 hours, you get results on your keto strip. The first time I went into ketosis back in 1993, I was doing Atkins at the time, and sure enough, as soon as I got to 20 grams of carbs, the next day, I think I went through a Sunday with 20 grams of carbs. In the morning when I woke up Monday, I think it was like Monday morning at 10 a.m., I tested and I had good color. And then I noticed about a month later that, oh my God, despite doing all the same things, same regimen, dialed in, I wasn't getting the same level of color. I thought that was really peculiar. Of course, now we understand better how the body works, the physiology works. We understand now that the body gets enzymatically and metabolically programmed to produce just the right amount of ketones to satisfy our bodily needs. It stops producing in excess that we can test for so easily, right? One thing I like about the keto regimen, and Dr. Ben Bikman explained this better than anyone, that one of the features of ketosis is the ability to waste energy. That our body never gets so perfectly tuned, if you will, that we completely stop excreting excess ketones in the form of urine and breath. Well, thank goodness. What a great feature. We get to waste energy and it never stops. It reduces. And that's why the color on the strips, it reduces as well. Number two, stable energy. Right? Not just energy, but stable throughout the day. I don't know about you, but I'm one of those guys that, man, I could nap every day at 2 o'clock when I was a SAD guy, a standard American diet guy. So if you experience that, that does start with ketones as our energy source, but it's exacerbated, it's improved upon once we're fat adapted. So that's number two. Number three is mental clarity. You know, if someone had said to me, Mike, did you experience mental clarity, that often talked about, often repeated benefit of ketosis, I would have said no. I would have said, I don't know what that means. And then someone one day in a conversation said to me, yeah, but what I mean by it is the ability to focus for long periods of time, the ability to get way more done in the same amount of time because I'm able to stay on it without being distracted. And then it clicked. I was like, oh my God, has that ever improved for me? That I can now sit down and in a day get twice as much done as I used to. And that leads itself to number four, which is regarding our mood. So moods improve, less mood swings. Now, those are directly related to items 2 and 3. When your energy is good and when you can have the ability to have mental clarity, then both, well, in fact, there's a third thing. The third is the improved glucose metabolism we have, that we're no longer victims of the ups and downs of the swings of glucose in our bloodstream. So improved glucose metabolism, as well as stable energy and mental clarity, all lends itself to enhanced and improved moods. Just phenomenal. All right, so that's number 4. Number 5 is probably the one that we can measure. And the reason is because it's improved physiological markers. And what I mean by that is if people, particularly if they take meds, like if someone's got edema, you know that word edema means swelling around joints. Typically, people will have swollen ankles. That's edema. Right? It's inflammation and swelling around a joint. They take meds for that, or meds for high blood pressure, or meds for heart conditions, for high cholesterol, or diabetics. Type 2 diabetic may take metformin or some other meds to deal with their diabetes. A type 1 takes insulin. All of those can be reduced in a properly formulated ketogenic diet, especially so much more so when fat adapted. Okay, and lastly, number 6, this is maybe a bit obscure. And again, this one I didn't catch either until it was brought to my attention. Our tastes may change. And what's most common is that people, once they're fat adapted, they'll comment that things they used to enjoy that were sweets, right? Now they're too sweet. In fact, they're nauseatingly sweet, right? That's kind of profound. For me, it was taste changing in other ways. Like I used to not enjoy hot peppers. I love them now. Second is dark chocolate used to be too bitter for me. 70–80% chocolate, I didn't enjoy that at all. You'd have to like mix that into something that was sweeter to get rid of the bitter taste. Now, nothing I enjoy more than a square of good 80% dark chocolate. Right, what used to be bitter now is the perfect amount of sweetness. I love it. Now, of that list of mood swings and improving stable energy or getting stable energy, of improving mental clarity, all of those you could even argue, as I did when it came to hunger and cravings, that happens much earlier. Those are not switches that happen when you're fat adapted. Right? First of all, you need to realize being fat adapted is a bit of a process. It's not overnight. And so those kind of improvements will happen from the moment you get in ketosis. None of those things are truly indicative of being fat adapted. Now, the ketone strips, even they will begin to lighten over time. It's not, I didn't just wake up in the morning and go from purple to pink on the urine strip. So I think that the ones that are truly indicative of being fat adapted, again, there being no test for fat adaptation, is number 7. So I'm going to call this the bonus one, because to me this was an overnight thing. And if you also exercise, you may have also noticed that you woke up one morning and things were different. When I first began this keto phase, this keto regimen, and I got into ketosis immediately. Of course, I had the flu. I got the keto flu, so I got the fatiguing and the cramping and the nausea and the headache. So that was one part. But even after the first few days of that, when I understood it was now an electrolyte imbalance and I began to supplement potassium, magnesium, and sodium, then that took care of the flu. But I still had, oh my God, the gym. Here's where I knew. Right, number 7 to me is exercise performance. Right, in a nutshell, my performance sucked. Strength like a 7-year-old girl. Like honestly, it was pathetic. I was really, really disappointed in myself. So much so that I almost quit because of it. I mean, when I'm doing HIIT with my clients or with my boot camp, and I'm knocking off typically 35 or 40 burpees, and all of a sudden 15 has got me gassed. I mean, just wrecked. I'm flipping tires 10 or 12 times, and after 5, I can't. I fail. I drop the tire. That's embarrassing, right? And so I almost quit because of that. But I knew what I had gone through in the previous decades with Atkins, so I stuck with it. And for me, in the middle of the 4th week, so at about 3.5 weeks, a switch. I go to the gym in the middle of the 4th week and knock off a personal best. Like unbelievable. Like it was overnight, that change for me. Then the next day I knocked out a HIIT workout and destroyed it. Destroyed HIIT. I mean, energy to spare. So for me, personally, the only true indicator was gym and sports performance. So if you work out, you'll notice that as well. You notice that one day, and hopefully in the 4th, 5th, or 6th week, then all of a sudden things click. Things fall into place. You're not sore. You're not hurting. You're eager for the next one. You got energy to spare, and you're knocking out great workouts. Now, to finish off this topic of being fat adapted, let's talk about the time it takes. I've heard people say as little as 3 or 4 weeks. That's my contention, because for me, it was the 3.5 week mark when this switch was flipped for me in the gym. But I've heard people say, no, it takes 6 or 8 or even 12 weeks. So in my research, in my looking up how long it takes, it does seem to be a very wide scale, very individual. However, just by way of support, I want to introduce you to, if you haven't heard the name Dr. Phinney. Dr. Phinney is a pioneer in the space of keto and ketosis. He, and in my humble opinion, he and Dr. Atkins set up keto as we know it today. And he talks about the Inuit people. Let me just go ahead and play the clip, and then we'll really quickly talk about it after.
I thought I'd come up with the idea of keto-adaptation. And then I come upon this thing where he says, when first thrown wholly upon the diet of reindeer meat, by which he means caribou, which is what they hunted in the winter when they were inland, it seems inadequate to properly nourish the system, and there is an apparent weakness and inability to perform severe exertive journeys. But this soon passes away in the course of 2 or 3 weeks.
Nice, eh? 2 to 3 weeks for people living on a pure meat diet, just like the Inuit. There was a study done in the Journal of Sports Medicine out of New Zealand. And if you notice, like this, as little as 5 days of training with low carb, high fat retools the muscle to enhance fat burning capacity with robust changes notice that persist despite acute strategies to restore carbohydrate availability. 2 things I want you to get from this. In this case, with elite athletes, these are all cyclists who are part of this ultra endurance protocol, right? So elite athletes, they can do it as little as 5 days. And what I thought was really interesting was being fat adapted is a state that the body wants to keep. It wants to hold on to despite the fact you introduce carbs, which is why I'm a big fan of refeeding. I do not believe in a full day of refeeding, of introducing carbs or carb loading or what is technically called CKD, cyclical keto dieting. You cannot undo fat adaptation. And notice here, in as little as 5 days, these changes persisted despite acute strategies to restore carbohydrate availability. I mean, how key is that? Being fat adapted is the bomb. And notice the second comment, despite 5 days being enough to initiate adaptation, 2 to 3 week exposure to minimal carbs achieves adaptation to high blood ketone concentrations. So again, in the 2 to 3 week, so even if you're not an athlete, you don't exercise regularly, come on, let's call it 3 to 5 weeks. So if anyone tells you it's 10, 12 weeks or a year, I don't think that's supported by science, okay, or by the evidence of, as presented by Dr. Finney, of people who actually live the lifestyle like the Inuit. On that note, folks, I hope you found this entertaining as well as enlightening, got some information from it. I didn't do much more than really muddy the water further about how fat adaptation works, that it really can't be tested, but hopefully this one, particularly with exercise, is the nail in the coffin for you to tell you if you're fat adapted or not. Otherwise, you still do have the hunger, the lack of cravings, the change in keto strips, the improvement in mood, the improvement in energy, the improvement in mental clarity. And if you are on meds, you'll see those drop. On that note, I really appreciate your time. Again, put a comment in the comment section if you'd like to see content like this. Happy to turn it into a video for you. And be sure to share it with anyone you know who's in keto or interested in it. And on that note, see you in the next one.